All right. First take, let's do it. My name is Dr. Rigobert Keverputz. I'm a naturopathic physician on beautiful Salt Spring Island, British Columbia, Canada. And today, I want to talk to you about thyroid hormones because I see a lot of patients that have thyroid issues, and I thought instead of just talking to one person, let's talk to a whole lot of people. And that way, hopefully, every single one of you gets to take something away that helps you out, so that you don't have to spend a whole lot of time and a whole lot of cash and a whole lot of overwhelm to get better. So why don't we get right to it? I got some notes here in front of me, so don't mind me looking down. Just helps me sort of organize my thoughts. First thing I want to show you, and you'll see that on the slide, is that let's get into the pathways. Very simple. We have a brain, and that brain communicates down to the thyroid. And it communicates it through something known as thyroid stimulating hormone. That's called a TSH. You might know a TSH because it's the number one thing that gets tested when you get any blood work done. So this value, when it's low, it's essentially saying the brain is not yelling, it's whispering to the thyroid, make more hormone. And if that value is really high, the brain is yelling at the thyroid, make lots of hormone. So when the value is very high, it essentially is saying that, well, you must not have a lot of metabolism happening, because that's what the thyroid molecules do. And therefore, a feedback mechanism from the cells to the brain is saying, hey, we need more thyroid, we need more thyroid, we need more thyroid. And so the brain yells down at the thyroid and says, make more of that. Now, in Canada, you'll commonly see a TSH range between 0.4 and let's say 5.5 or so. Yeah, well, remember, we live in a public healthcare system, and if we were looking at optimal numbers, we would probably have 70% of people more fall outside of that. That would be 70% more prescription medications, 70% more doctor's visits, 70% more hospitalizations, etc. And that's just highly inundating for a public healthcare system that's already crashing. Anyways, I digress. The point here is that you want to have a value of a TSH between 1 and 2. That's the sweet spot. And the TSH tells the thyroid to make two molecules, T4 and T3. Now, you got a lot of T4, but T4 is not the moneymaker. T3 is the moneymaker. And T3 is the metabolically active form that ends up going into the thyroid receptors and activating that. And you see that here on that graph as well. Now, T4 can convert into T3. It's almost like a backup. You got more of it to help you convert. And yes, you need some iodine to make that happen. Now, as part of that creation of T4 and T3 molecules, often you'll see things like thyroid peroxidase, right? That's a particular enzyme that catalyzes that conversion. And we often measure, if we think someone has Hashimoto's or an autoimmune condition, we'll check things like thyroid peroxidase antibodies, or thyroid stimulating hormone antibodies, or thyroid thyroglobulin antibodies, right? These are all molecules that partake in the cataclysm, or the catalyst of converting these thyroid molecules so that they're efficacious. Now you'll see in here that there's also something known as a reverse T3. So what does that mean? I said T3 was the money maker, so what's reverse T3? Well, think of it like this. You got two hands, but they're not identical, are they? No. Because if I wrap them, I got two thumbs sticking out. Now, I could convert one of them, and that could be a match. Sort of. But if I were to take like a set of gloves, and I put my right hand into a left glove and my left hand into a right glove, it gets in there, but it's not a snug fit. And you and I both know that you need a snug 100% lock and key fit in order for the receptor in the cells to be activated to metabolize. Now, when I say metabolism, what does that really mean? It's the fire. Now, I think often of like old day steam train, right? Think of that big furnace at the front of the locomotive where you see the men, shoveling coal into the fire and making a big fire as big as possible to get that steam going, to create that inertia, those wheels in motion for the train to move. We're no different. Metabolism is this internal fire that we have. And so when someone's so hypo being like below thyroid function, below metabolism, guess what? You got a small fire. When you got a small fire, you're going to be tired. You're going to be depressed. You're not going to be burning as many calories, so likely you're going to gain some weight. Also, you're going to feel sluggish. Sometimes we can have some skin issues happen as well, whether it's like a very oily skin. And something's at the tip of my tongue and I can't think of it right now. Hypothyroidism, sluggish, underactive. Just think of like everything's just... and you're intolerant to cold, right? You don't have this big fire, so you're going to be chilly. And you see this sometimes in people where they're the first ones to have like a sweater on, double sweater, triple layer, they're cold all the time. And in medicine, we also have a pathognomonic. Pathognomonic means like, it's almost like a telltale sign. When you got this going on, you got a thyroid issue. And that is when we do a reflex test on the Achilles heel. If we get the bottom, the top of the Achilles heel, and we give it the good old tappity tap tap, and you don't have that reflexive response going down, that's often a pathognomonic for a thyroid issue. Now, what if you have hyperthyroidism, right? Hyper meaning above, too much, right? I'm hyper. Well, now think of it like, I've got a big, strong fire. I've got diarrhea. I'm restless. I'm losing weight. I'm hot. You even might see someone have goiters where their eyes are popping out a little bit more. They're going to feel a little bit, they're probably going to be a little bit thinner, right? So that's hyper, and there's hypo, and then there's Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune-oriented condition around the thyroid, which can sort of wax and wane into both sides of the coin, especially if your thyroid ends up getting burnt out from hyperthyroid stints. So then when you're burnt out, well, guess what? You don't have much left, and then you go into a more chronic hypothyroidism state. So let's move on to slides. What are some things that we can do here? In terms of thyroid hormones, before we get into any prescriptions, well, iodine's important. But let's say if you got Hashimoto's and you've got a very overactive thyroid, well, you might not want to be throwing some like oil on the fire, as in like give a person more iodine. So you have to be a little careful about it. Lugol's iodine is a great source of that. And as you can see, it is essential for the synthesis of thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. Often we also look at cofactors. Cofactors are like hype man. They're like your wingman. They help things happen. And so like selenium, zinc, magnesium, iron, these are all cofactor minerals that help the conversion and the creation of thyroid molecules. So if there are certain nutritional deficiencies, well, and in any one of those, that might particularly play into why you have a thyroid issue in the first place. We got some vitamin issues. Certainly B vitamins. I'm finally looking in the camera. B vitamins, super important. I give them to everybody. Don't ever take them without food. You're going to regret it the day you did. You're going to feel nauseous, queasy, clammy. Ugh, no good. And then we got some herbs. Now, the thing I love about herbs is that they're synergistic. It's not like a 1 + 1 = 2. It's a 1 + 1 = 7. And a lot of these herbs have like multiple endpoints. So from ashwagandha, as an adaptogen, helps support the conversion, but hell, it helps you ease out. That's a very important thing when you're stressed all the time. Rhodiola as an adaptogen. Now they call it an adaptogen. I consider it more of an adrenal tonic because I've seen people just get a lot of energy from it, and sometimes maybe a little too much. Then we have also some more like thyroid-oriented herbs, like bladderwrack, for example, because it's a seaweed high in iodine, or Bacopa monnieri, right? Bacopa to help thyroid stimulation, or Google to enhance T3 conversion. So take a look at that. It's just a snapshot. Remember, I will probably have edited some sort of disclaimer at the beginning. This is not medical advice. Do at your own risk, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, let's move forward. So are many people iodine deficient? Yes, I'd say. And why is that? Well, first of all, we reduce the use of iodized salt. Why? Because we're doing fancy salts. We like saltining things all the time. We're like, oh, give me that Himalayan salt, and give me that sea salt, and give me that, I don't know, some sort of other salt, rosemary salt, porcini mushroom salt. Well, the point here is that when you have good, classic, kosher salt, table salt, that's iodized. That has iodine in it, and we don't really use much of that anymore. So that's one thing. There's a low dietary intake because, like we in North America aren't like, let's say, the Japanese who have a lot of seaweed and seafood and so forth. And we're also kind of moving away from dairy, which has some iodine components. And also it has a lot to do with like plant-based diets. They're really healthy, but they often lack iodine. So just want to say here that you can't polarize things. And we as humans are great at polarizing. We say, oh yeah, this isn't that good. We think it's not good for everything. No. Like everything has its good and its bad sides. It's just a balancing act, right? Not balance, but balancing, a verb. Something you got to do, not something you just sit with. We have some soil depletion, right? We know that our soils aren't as fertile as they used to be, so they're iodine poor. We have more exposure to halogens. So if you think about bromine, fluoride, and chlorine found in baked goods, tap water, disinfectants, they compete. They compete. It's like you want to go to your favorite restaurant, but there's a whole lineup outside of people, and you can't get in, right? You're the iodine, and all the people in the lineup is like the bromine, the fluoride, and the chlorine. They're getting in there first, and you don't know how long they're going to be eaten. Lastly, two things. One is you also got goitrogens. So goitrogens, especially found in cruciferous vegetables and millet, contain compounds that inhibit iodine uptake. Again, not harmful in moderation, but if you have a high intake because you're like, this is good, raw cruciferous vegetables is the best thing, I'm all about it. Well, anything too much might have an impact in a negative way. So that can contribute to iodine deficiency. Often that's also resolved when we start steaming or cooking these vegetables. Right? You lose something, but you gain something. And lastly, there's a lack of awareness. Most of us just don't think about it. I mean, it's not like a car. A car breaks down, we're like, holy smokes, I gotta do something about it. I can't get everywhere. Our body breaks down, we just kind of hope it's gonna get better. And that's, it makes sense. We have this vitalistic principle of the body can heal itself. But it doesn't always happen now, does it? And sometimes it's real damn slow. So let's figure out why that is the case. And vitamin D deficiency is a big piece. I mean, I should do a whole another topic on that in of itself. It's a big deal. Top 3 most important things, especially when you're living in Canada, right? Because we live north of the equator. It's dark a lot of the times. It's rainy if you're in Vancouver. And just because it's sunny, it don't mean you're outside. Especially during the COVID era, everybody was inside. No one's getting vitamin D, and that certainly is the worst thing for your immune system. Let's carry on. So some history and signs and symptoms that we see here. So certainly we have to look at some classic things that we tend to see. You want to look at are you fatigued? Is there hair, skin, nail issues? Are there some weight changes, temperature changes in terms of intolerance, muscle aches, joint pains, cognition, right? I can't think clearly. I'm having I'm foggy headed. My memory's not quite there, right? Has a lot to do with being hypothyroid, hoarse voice, sore throat, constipation or diarrhea, right? So we might do an ultrasound to check it. We're probably going to do some blood work. The doctor's probably going to palpate to see if it's boggy, swollen, any nodules. And often I like to check antibodies because when you're overwhelmed and your nervous system is overwhelmed and you're feeling dysregulated, that totally spills over onto your immune system. That's why we also call it, there's a term for it, PNEI, psychoneuroendocrine immunology. It's a particular topic that just says that your body's complex. It's all related. So if you're dysregulating the foundation of your body, your nervous system, and the way that you respond to your internal and external environment, that's going to have an impact on your immune system, which defends you and protects you, especially when it feels like it has to protect you from things that it actually shouldn't. Hence, autoimmunity. It attacks the very thing that it shouldn't. You might make a measurement of blood pressure, right? If you're hyperthyroid, it might be elevated, right? Lots of blood pressure, a lot of pressure. And if you're hypothyroid, it might be a little bit lower. Temperature, right? Either do oral or through the ear or through the anus, rectum, but you don't see that often these days. Although it's honestly probably one of the most legitimate and accurate measurements taken. Full thyroid panel. I mean, you'll only get a TSH if you're in Canada and you got a doc that's willing to go and extend their leg out for you. Get the whole panel done. Get your TPO antibodies, get your thyroglobulin antibodies, get your reverse T3, get the T4, T3, TSH. And yes, don't just stop there. You want to kind of see what else is happening in the body. Check your CBC, your ferritin, B12, vitamin D status, especially in the winter. Not as useful in the summer unless you do get it tested and you're deficient, then you know you're really bad. Some ranges between 0.5 and 2.5 for TSH. I love seeing a good one. T4, 12 to 16. I mean, most of these things, I usually like to see them in the upper range. I certainly want to see antibodies negative. And yes, there is reverse T3. And yes, you do want to see a little bit of it. Why? Well, there's this theory that reverse T3 was in place as almost like a hibernation chamber. What I mean by that is that in the winter, prehistorically, we didn't have as much food available. Now, did we? And so what we had to do in a way is we had to slow down. Why? Because if we speed up and we keep doing what we do, we burn a lot of fuel, we burn a lot of calories, a lot of metabolism. And you don't want to be very metabolically active now in the winter, do you? When you have more scarcity around and you want to ration more of your food. And so what a reverse T3 does is it slows you down. That's what it does. And prehistorically, we had some like real, call it warning signs of wanting to slow down. You know, the classic, like when I say classic, I mean real classic. I mean like shelter, fire, food, you know, survival. Nowadays is like my job, my boyfriends, the world's, Jesus, social media, you know, things like that. Like we get massively stressed out and your body can't quite tell the difference, but the body does keep the score. Here's a lab panel that I had done back in May 10th, 2025. And you can see here for someone, they've got elevated antibodies. They got elevated thyroglobulin antibodies. Still waiting for the reverse T3 at the time. Probably should update this. But a TSH at 1.4. Now, this person is medicating with desiccated thyroid, my preferred method of prescription. Not always the case, but I do tend to lean towards it. And her irons are pretty good. I usually like to see 100, but I'm not concerned about the 71. That's the ferritin, the storage form of iron. You see that on the left-hand side. And, you look at TSH, you think that's normal, but you look at the antibodies, you see stuff's going on. And that tells me there's some dysregulation. The immune system is feeling some confusion. And can that be genetically? Can that be due to some SNPs? Can that be due to some gut dysfunction? Yeah, absolutely. The body is a complex system. It all interweaves, interconnects, especially when it comes to the gut and it comes to the hormones and it comes to your stress levels. You know, those are the three big pillars. I mean, there's a reason we call it a gastrointestinal system, and we call it a nervous system and a endocrine system. These are bloody systems, not just like individual parts. Systems, big. Think big picture. Here's something I was just easy peasy put out as a spreadsheet that just puts a condition and so some of the key points you want to maybe know about it. I'm not going to get into it. It's something you can look at. Take notes. So like I said, you got T4, T3, and as a prescription, it's also known as levothyroxine or Synthroid. That's how you probably know it. As well as T3, often known as Cytomel. Cytomel? I think so. Well, it's called T3, but I think Cytomel. Difference also here is that T4 has a long half-life and T3 has a short half-life. So T4 is like slow coast and T3 is quick up, quick down. So it kind of helps to have a little bit of both, right? Not just one or the other. You want balance. Now, the reason I like desiccated thyroid is because it contains both T4 and T3. However, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you might not want to take it because it's based from a pork, right? Porcine-sourced thyroid glands. And it has a particular ratio. Now, that ratio is relatively similar to a human. It's not exactly, but it's much better than most. And it used to be the standard of care, right, in the 1960s. But it had problems with standardization. What do I mean? Not every source was the same. You know, pharmacies didn't have the same level of regulation. You didn't know always you were going to get that exact source based on where it was drawn, from which pig, at which pig's gland and whatnot. And so once they created a synthetic version called T4, we were like, oh, I know exactly what I'm getting when I'm getting it. And only later, when we've discovered, especially when we've discovered peripheral conversion, which means T4 turning into T3, we said, oh, well, Jesus, why do we even bother giving T3 if we can have T4 and it converts into T3? We'll just get both anyways. But discovering about reverse T3 and some of the antibodies, we realized, okay, well, that's actually not a silver bullet. It doesn't cure everything. There's some things you maybe want to watch out for. So that's why I usually still like desiccated. I mean, there's a little bit of hum and ha about, well, desiccated thyroid, how does that impact autoimmunity, for example? Taking something foreign, putting in your body for something that's already maybe a little sensitive and dysregulated and doing something wrong. I mean, I always think about it like when you're working and you're overwhelmed, you make mistakes. And that's essentially what an immune system does. Some interactions you ought to be mindful of: anticoagulants, estrogens, sympathomimetics, sort of like salbutamol, right? Bronchodilator, puffer for asthma and so forth. That can exacerbate side effects like shakiness, hand tremors, because it can upregulate the nervous system. And bada bing, bada boom. Also, that's pretty much the end of the lecture here. Probably making it a 3-part series because we're 20 minutes. But if you stuck around for it, huzzah, great attention. Also, make sure to take your thyroid medication first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Don't take magnesium with it or calcium with it. That's going to impact some of the interactions. Get yourself measured every 6 weeks initially until you see a steady state and you have someone to watch over you. Eat healthy, do all the good things. I mean, like I said, it's a complex system. You're lucky if you just have to do one thing, but chances are, if there's an autoimmune picture, you gotta dig in. It's not just here, take a pill and you get solved. No, chances are you gotta do a few things to get better with it. So, I'm gonna leave it at that. Hope you got something out of it, and be in touch. Bye-bye.